They actually planned that. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Wow, fantastic. We have what I consider to be a very special gift today. Donna is president and CEO of Unity Worldwide Ministries. That means she has a staff of about 30 or 40 people that she manages, and she casts a vision for unity overall. She sees a world that is spiritually enlightened. A whole world, not just a few people, but the whole world. And she lives her life as an example of that. And she was at Fairfax for around 14 years as a senior minister there before going to Unity Worldwide Ministries. Fairfax is the ministry that sponsored us in 1952, which we eventually became a minister. So we have an affiliation there, if you would, through the years. And they have a wonderful ministry there, and a lot of that's because of the work that Donna did and the spirit that she grew there. She also has grown a spirit in our home office in Unity, get it right, Unity Worldwide Ministries headquarters, okay? I know you got it wrong. Anyway, what she's done, I think, in 6 years is remarkable because she has literally been an example of how to change culture, to bring people along. And one of the things I really love about Donna is that she's never met anybody that she doesn't like. She really hadn't. Well, anyway. But she is, what she really has done, and I admire so much, is she has a tough job in some ways. Sometimes she has to let people go. Sometimes she has to tell people what to do. Sometimes she has to talk to volunteers, such as myself, and be direct with us. But she always does it in a way where she doesn't damage the relationship, even in the toughest situations, because she really believes in people, and she believes in the power that we all have, and she honors that. And so she stays in touch, literally, with people in a loving way. You're going to feel that this morning as she talks about being in joy. That's what I'm going to say anyway. Being in joy. And you're going to feel it this morning. So I am just so pleased to have my friend and colleague, Reverend Donna Johnson, be here at Unity of Richmond. Donna, please come on up.
Oh, thank you. It truly is my joy to be here this morning. As I said in the first service, Richard paints such a picture. It's like no pressure here, None whatsoever. But I was here several years ago when you had the dedication and celebration of your remodel of this building. And I recall what a fabulous energy that this congregation gives off. I mean, so much appreciation and joy naturally that I love to talk about my favorite subject this morning, which is joy. So I'm going to start with a few stories that are going to take us to a place that may feel a little uncomfortable, a little dark, but it will also set the stage for why you are so important, why I am so important, why each one of us is so important in this world to embody our authentic presence as the expression of joy. So yesterday morning, I left Kansas City at 8:15, which means I got up much earlier. And the night before, I stayed up a little later than usual. So I decided I'm just going to sleep all the way until I get into Norfolk, because I went from Kansas City to Detroit, a little bit of a layover, Detroit down to Norfolk, get the rental car, drive an hour and a half, and I was kind of tired toward the end of the day. I did sleep the first leg, and then from Detroit down to Norfolk, I sat next to this woman who revealed to me she was 74 years old. I didn't share that in the first service. She was 74. What a delight. Normally, I don't talk. I just put my head against the window, I close my eyes, and that's the signal of I'm not your new best friend, okay? But for some reason, she said something, or I said something, and we started talking. And she said she had gone to Saudi Arabia and then to Cincinnati, and from Cincinnati to Detroit, from Detroit down to Norfolk. That was her route. Actually, she never went to Saudi Arabia. At the end of our conversation, I learned she said Santa Barbara. But that's how the Spirit works, because I thought, Saudi Arabia? You're really interesting. I want to hear more about this. So that's probably why I started talking to her. And so she asked me what I was doing, since I lived in Kansas City and was headed to Norfolk, and I explained that I was coming here. And she said, well, what are you speaking about? And I said, joy. And she said to me, well, I don't even know you, but I can tell there's joy in your voice. And that was such a compliment. And I said, well, thank you. And she said, I've seen a transformation in my daughter. And the way that she told this story was that her daughter was engaged to this young man, and they were in college. And he and another friend, a male friend of his, had gone down to the beach for a day or two to do just some fun or whatever, and they were crossing the street one night when a car ran them down, and they were both killed. And she talked about how her daughter lost her sense of joy. She said there was no vim and vigor, and those are the words that she used. There was no vim and vigor. There was no energy. There was no life in her eyes. And then she said after several years, a couple of years of her being like this, suddenly I began to notice that her energy picked up, that there was a peace about her, that her enthusiasm was starting to return for life. She said, then I learned she'd met this guy online, and next thing I know, they got married. And I said, oh, wow, that is quite a story. And I was really struck by this story because it reminded me of another story that I'm going to share with you. I took a 2-month sabbatical in 2005 in Italy, and I stayed in Assisi. And there I met a woman from Pennsylvania because she heard that I spoke English to the waiter, and so she came over, and English-speaking people kind of clumped together, to have somebody to talk to. And she was telling me that she was on her way to Switzerland. And then she told me that her daughter was engaged to this man while in college, and that he was a math major working on his master's. And one evening, crossing the campus, he was attacked by someone and was murdered. And she talked about the sadness and the grief that her daughter went through, and that's an unbelievable tragedy that I cannot even imagine. But my heart feels the energy even telling the story. And her daughter never recovered until she took her own life, finally. So this woman was here to go to Switzerland because the parents of the young man that her daughter had been engaged to lived in Geneva. And every year she made this pilgrimage through Italy up into Geneva, and the parents of those two would get together, and they had become close friends. And she said it's a bittersweet thing, but it means everything. So I began to think about how important the presence of joy is, to be in touch with that. As I hear the news reports of yet another mass killing, or yet this or that, or this is violence that is perpetrated from one person to a group of people, or groups of people to other groups of people, and it can be based in any difference whatsoever, cultural, racial, ethnic, class, it doesn't matter. People being at each other in destructive ways. I'm thinking the reason for that is they have no sense of joy in their lives. I am firmly convinced of this, I myself. Mother Teresa said, if we've lost our peace, it is because we've forgotten that we belong to each other. Well, even more important than a sense of peace is a sense of joy, because I believe without touching this sense of joy and knowing what that authentically is, a state of peace is just a state of resignation, a state of stagnation. So joy is very, very important. Teilhard de Chardin is a Jesuit priest who was from France, and he lived from 1881 to 1955. When he made his transition, he was living in New York City. Not only was he a Jesuit priest, he was also a paleontologist studying nature, and he also served in World War I. So he had quite a full and varied life. His passion was spirituality and the evolution of consciousness and the integration of that awareness as all things. So God, you are the song is an expression of that consciousness which he brought to bear in the contemporary world. And the world wasn't necessarily ready to hear a lot of that, particularly the Jesuits. But he expressed it in everything that he did. And one of the things that he has said, which Unity quotes frequently, is that we are individualized expressions of God. In other words, God is all there is and all the various expressions of all the various people, everything in the manifest world, everything is a vibration and a manifestation of God. And we are a conscious expression, meaning our consciousness is sentient, and we have abilities, creative abilities that maybe other expressions don't have. And another thing that Teilhard de Chardin said is joy is the most infallible sign of the presence of God. So when Richard asked me, what am I going to speak about? It was like, I don't know. But I knew that it had to do with joy because joy is such a prominent thing in my life. So let's talk about the Christmas story just for a moment. We came out of the Christmas season. And I love the Christmas season for what it teaches us about hope. It's hope. It's a message of hope. In this, we're given a vision of what this hope can accomplish in Isaiah chapter 11 when the writer talks about, and the wolf shall lie down with the lamb, and the leopard will not be attacking the fatted calf, and it's going to be this big vision of peace. So everybody thinks about this verse as being an expression of peace, coexistence, and harmony, which it is. However, this particular passage ends by saying, and a little child shall lead them. And if we look at this superficially, we might think, oh, well, they're talking about the baby Jesus, and they're talking about the infant child. Well, that's true, but I think it goes much deeper than that. What will lead us into this place of harmony and healing is a little child. And that child within us is the presence of the divine child. It is the state of our original innocence and harmony into which we are born. Now, several Sundays ago, I attended the church that I attend when I'm not invited to speak somewhere and I'm not traveling, and that is Unity Temple on the Plaza in Kansas City, and it was Humor Sunday. And there was a guy opening up the service, and he said many things, but what I remember most is this. He said, first, we're born fine. And he said, then we're defined. He said, and then along about our adulthood, we start the process of refining. Oh, I thought that was just brilliant. I thought that was a brilliant statement because it's so true. We are born into this state of innocence, and then somehow we get mixed messages. We get the message that something is not okay with us. We are defined. This is who you are, this is who you have to be, this is how you have to grow up. And we begin to get out of sync with our natural inner child. So later we discover for ourselves, something doesn't feel right. I think they're wrong. I think they're right. Something is wrong. Something's wrong with me. And so we try to get it back. And that is the purpose of religion to a large extent, and the purpose of a lot of things. To be able to refine what I've been defined as. Not only am I courteous, I'm really courteous. We try to be a better whatever it is we're taught that we should be. But the truth of the matter is that every situation in which we experience tension and conflict, there is a spiritual solution. And that has to do with allowing the little child to lead us and to know what that is. So what is the little child? The child within us, the divine child that is our natural nature, is the source of our spontaneity, it is the source of our creativity, and it is the source of our joy. Jesus taught his disciples as he was preparing to make his transition. He said, if you keep my commandments, you'll abide in love. My love will be in you. Your love will abide in me. And he said, I've told you these things so that your joy may be complete. Why is that so important? I believe Jesus had a mission statement. And the mission statement was this: I have come so that you might have life and have it more abundantly. So what is the abundant life? Oh, I don't have to worry about paying my bills. I got money in the bank. That's abundant life. And it's more than outer prosperity. And we all know that the abundant life is the sense of well-being and connectedness that we feel with our own experience and that we feel with one another. So statistics show that longevity and the prosperous life have more to do with our integration into society and with our connections to one another than your diet, than exercise. Your sense of well-being is more contingent on how much you embrace your own life and one another. So that just says one thing, pure and simple: we need each other. And in essence, we are each other. And I can learn from you, and you can learn from me, and that means we don't have to have the same experience. And as a matter of fact, I thank you for having some experiences I don't have to have. Thank you. I can learn the lesson just fine through observation and the speaking to you. And we're all here to share in that way. This is so important because let me share with you some statistics that I looked up in preparation for speaking with you today. So these were mind-opening for me. Research shows that 350 billion people globally experience depression, significant depression. I'm not talking about having a blue day. I'm talking about this chronic day after day after day. 11% of adolescents in the U.S. by age 18 have real depression. 70% of women are more likely than men to have depression. In other words, we're 70% more likely as women to experience depression over men. 16,200,000 is the number of Americans who had at least one depressive disorder in 2012. And that has gone up just slightly. And the highest age range is between 18 and 25. So our young adults are facing a lot of pressure, a lot of uncertainty in this time of change. And one of the things that I firmly believe is that unity is here to help people anchor themselves in the truth. Just like a boat may toss and turn on the surface of the water, the anchor is firm. And that is what has changed my life over the years, is knowing that I have a spiritual presence, even when it's stormy on top, even when I don't feel like I'm steady enough. That presence never abandons me. As a matter of fact, it's impossible to ever be cut off from the presence of God, because that's the reality of who and what we are. There are 50% of Americans with major depression who never seek help. That's half of us. That's half of us. And as I share this, it's more than just statistics, because I want you to know I have had my bouts of depression. When people hear me say that, they're shocked. Well, I'm human. I have had my challenges. And those moments where I couldn't see clearly, my heart hurt, I was confused, and weathering that storm to get through it, I went through some depressions. 10% there is the estimation of Americans who are over 65 and who are depressed. And again, I think a lot of that is because of the isolation some people feel as they age and lose family members, no longer have a job to go to, and life shifts. when we get into those years. We may not always know who is depressed around us. We may not even recognize that we might be, because the symptoms of depression, the most obvious one, of course, is the sadness that people feel. But you can also have a stomach ache and a headache that just won't go away, and that is a sign of depression. You may not be able to sleep through the night. You keep waking up. You can't fall asleep. Those may be signs of anxiety and depression, which are kind of a marriage of sorts. Appetite changes and loss of energy. Sense of hopelessness and a loss of interest in those things that you once found your joy in. So this is part of our human experience. If joy is the most infallible sign of the presence of God, then what is the most infallible sign of joy? Can we just sit around and affirm ourselves into a state of joy? Well, that's a start. But that's probably not really going to get down into where the transformation needs to occur unless you begin to change a few things. One of the things is to change the way we think and begin to look at life and say yes to our opportunities. It means letting go of it. Stop dragging it around because it will bring you down. Because it weighs, it's an artificial weight, whatever it is. They shouldn't have done it. My mama shouldn't have done it. I should have never married him, should have never divorced him. It's just whatever it is we tell ourselves that puts us out of the harmony and the rhythm of the presence of God, because God is always in charge. And let me tell you, that's a good thing. That's a real good thing. Just as an aside, this morning I set my alarm. I was going to get up and meditate and have everything all ready. And my alarm didn't go off. And I wake up, that's an hour later than I intended to get up. I jump out of bed and I go, oh my gosh. I throw on some clothes and I run down to have a cup of coffee and some breakfast. And they said, well, the restaurant isn't open yet. I said, I thought you opened at 6. No, we don't open till 7. And I'm thinking, what is going on with today already? Like something was wrong. And then I thought, okay, I'll just use this time to go do my meditation. And I had a lovely morning, the most lovely people assisting me. God is always in charge. Judge not by appearances. Isn't that the truth? I may be having experiences I don't like. I may be witnessing attitudes and behaviors I don't like. But that does not negate the presence of God. And as I do my work and connect myself to this experience of within me, I have the ability to have compassion for someone's useless, self-induced suffering that they're spewing all over everybody. I can have compassion for the fact that they feel compelled to be that way and do that way. Why? Because they've lost their divine child. They've lost their divine child. And I can give them the space to maybe return to that if I don't spew the same stuff back. I just stand there and be a different presence. So I'm going to tell you how I found my joy. I don't even know where to begin except to say I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, which I said at the early service, and I've affirmed this my whole life. That's the Bible Belt. It's the buckle of the Bible Belt. So I grew up in the Methodist Church, which I loved that experience that I had. And I had a very strong connection to God. But what I learned, what I picked up from my culture at the time, was that as a woman, it was my job to love and to self-sacrifice. All right? I actually said to someone asked me what my needs were, and I just looked at them like they were nuts. Me? I don't have any needs. Why would I have a need? Need is not a bad word. It is acknowledging what it takes to feel connected, feel supported, to be able to express what you came here to express, which is nothing less than your joy, your love, your light, and your creativity. And you can't do that without being in touch with this little child. Because until we are in touch with the little child that sees the world anew, which has no opinion, which says yes, and then when its finger, his or her finger gets hurt, they forget about it and they can go on. It doesn't take very long. So that's part of the defining that we hold on to our hurts and the judgment of this shouldn't have happened. And if you study Byron Katie's work, she says, well, it did. You can argue with reality, but you're going to lose, but only 100% of the time. So it did happen. So because it happened, we just accept it and say, how can I view this in a way that takes me to my higher place and doesn't add to the baggage around my feet that holds me down and keeps me from experiencing the lightheartedness and the joy. You know, why is it that angels can fly? Because they take themselves so lightly. You've heard that, I'm sure. I've heard that for a long time, and I like to remember that. So we know the signs of joy. How can we access it? Forgive. Let it go. Ask. Ask for divine help. And be willing to follow the guidance that you are giving. So as I said, I grew up in Nashville. I think I entered ministry because I really felt my life was about giving all that I am and all that I have to everybody but me, because I really thought that for a long time. And then I remember when I started to awaken, I was in my church and I was standing in the foyer and I just had a thought. And the thought was, why don't I feel any joy? I mean, my life's been very successful. I've been through college. I have a nice marriage, a nice home. I've got a great job. I got ordained. I got all of this stuff, these goals, but it seemed like just a to-do list. And I couldn't feel any of the joy of this. And all it took was sincerely asking the question. And shortly after that, I started waking up in the middle of the night, grieving. And I mean deep grief, like someone had died. But by the time I would wake up, the feeling would go away. This went on for 8 months. It was maddening until finally I could feel it coming on in my sleep. And I managed to say, what is it? And this little voice said, I feel so unloved. Blew me away. I thought, what in the world? Where'd that come from? I know my husband loves me, my church loves me, my mama loves me, my cats love me. I mean, what's so unloved? And it took much meditation and talking to people and researching and reading for me to realize that that was the voice of my own divine child that I had discounted and abandoned. And it was a total shock to me. And getting back in touch with that child and learning to trust its wisdom and guidance has been a huge spiritual journey for me. But it has blessed me beyond my imagination. I have traveled places, I have met people, I have experienced things that I never envisioned for myself, simply because when the opportunity came, I said, okay. So I'm going to leave you this morning with a story that's very dear to my heart. And that's, I have a love in my life, a new love. And it's been a long time, I'll tell you. And, I don't do the online thing anymore. This is like, no. And I'd gotten to the point where I just said, it's going to be a God thing or it's just not going to happen. I am perfectly fine the way I am. I have a great job that I love. I work with wonderful people. And I've done so many beautiful things. And I've traveled the world over because opportunities came to me and I said yes. Not because I saved my money and forced it to happen. It just came to me and I said yes. So I'm standing in this place of gratitude and saying, okay, this is how it's going to be. Well, I sold my little condo overlooking Kansas City, and I bought almost a 100-year-old house in inner city Kansas City. And the house is 4 stories if you count the basement, and it's all wood floors. It's 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. And my friends were going, are you nuts? Why in the world would you buy a house like that? with all those stairs? You're going to go up and down all those stairs? I said, those stairs are going to keep me young. So I'm going them down those stairs. So anyway, I bought this house. And I didn't have much furniture in there, but I decided I would buy a TV. I don't even watch TV that much, but I knew winter would be coming on, and it's on the 3rd floor, the media room that the people before me had set up. And I said, okay, I'm going to put a TV up there. So I went to Costco and bought a TV and came down and I put it on the floor. And I needed a TV stand, and I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, well, don't go back to Costco and spend all that money. Just get one off of Craigslist. Well, never in my life have I ever bought anything off Craigslist. So he sent me all these connections, and I looked through them, and I saw this one TV stand that looked okay. And it was less than a mile from me. This guy owned it less than a mile, and the price seemed okay, much better than Costco. So I called him up, and I said, do you still have your TV stand? And he said, yes. And I said, he tells this story. He says, will it fit in my SUV? That's what I said to him. So anyway, I go over there, and his little dog was barking when I came in. He said, I was trying to keep him quiet, going, shh, shh. He said, all of a sudden, I saw your feet, and I looked up, and I looked all the way, and I went, So he helped me. He helped me load it up in my SUV, and we're standing there, and I've got this wad of cash in my hand, and he's thinking, are you ever going to pay me? When all of a sudden I said, oh, here's your money, and he took it. And I said, it was $75, right? And he goes, no, it was $65. To which I said, well, give me back my 10 then. And the look on his face was one of total amusement, a little bit shocked. And I remember intuitively thinking to myself, right there, this little voice inside said, I like you. We could be friends. I could just tell. So he offered to help me move it up to the 3rd floor of my house. And I went, oh, no. I've got a handyman who's coming tomorrow, and he can help me unload it. And he said, well, these are glass shelves, and they might break riding around the back of your car. I'm happy to help you if you want. And then the little voice said to me again, stop pushing away your good. Say yes. So I did. And about an hour later, he comes over, and we haul all that stuff up there, and we put it all together, and we get the TV up on the stand, get it all positioned. And I'm thinking, well, we work well together. I mean, it's just like we've been working together our whole lives. We come down the steps. He's in front of me. He comes and stands in my living room, puts his hands on it. I like your house. And I said, well, thank you. I'm standing behind him. And then he turns his head to the side, and he goes, I think you're cute. You want to go out with me sometime? And I'm standing there thinking, hey, I admire your courage. No joke. I had that thought. And I thought I said, well, sure. And he said, no, you didn't. He said, what you said was, really? Oh, Lord. So anyway, I said, well, you have my phone. He said I made him ask twice, too. I don't recall that. But anyway, I said, you have my phone number where I called you. I said, just text me sometime. He said, well, it won't be tonight. And I said, okay, fine. So he leaves. I'm off at Lowe's. I'm coming back, and I get a text from him. Said, I changed my mind about dating. And I went, oh, well, easy come, easy go, right? I'm fine. I'm blessed. I'm fine. And but when I pulled up my driveway, I actually opened the text because you can only see the first line. And it said, I changed my mind about dating. I said it wouldn't be tonight, but I'm sitting on my porch. It's such a beautiful day, and there's so much to do in Kansas City. Would you like to do something tonight? Would you like to go out tonight? What do you say? And I said, yes. As a matter of fact, I'm hungry, and I was planning on walking to this Ethiopian restaurant around the corner. Why don't you drive over, and we'll walk over there together? Which is what we did. And after that, we went to a jazz club, and we just had the best time. And so as he tells it, he said, we've only had one date. It's still going on. It hasn't ended yet. Yeah. So, and it's because I said yes. I thought, what's the difference between saying yes to you and saying yes to some guy online I've never met? What's the difference, really? And I already have a confirmation from my own intuitive knowing that I like you and that there seems to be a compatibility. So, since I had no future, he took me, furniture. This happens sometimes, Guy, and there's a story behind that, but I'm not going to go into it. since I had no furniture, he took me to an antique mall, and we were looking around, and I saw this bookcase, and we both stood, that's perfect for the study, that's perfect. So I bought it, but they were going to have to deliver it another day. Well, I had to be at work, and I asked him to come over to my house and just be there to let them in and to coordinate it all, which he did. So I come home from work, and this is what I'm going to leave you with. I come home from work, and there on top of the bookcase was a little sleigh, a red sleigh with Santa waving at everybody and holding a little child right here. Now, the weekend that I met him was Labor Day weekend. So I come in, and I stand there, and I go, oh, you've added something to the house. And he said, yes, you noticed. And I said, yes. I said, but it's September. And he looked at me, and he said, so, it's Christmas, isn't it? And instantly I knew, it's like, yes, I have been given the gift. Meeting him was the gift. And so that little Santa's going to sit on top of that bookcase. It's still up there now. It's going to be there because for the rest of my life, that's my reminder that every day the divine child is being born. So let me ask you this about Santa, right? Santa is an eternal spirit. So why is he portrayed as an old man? You know, well, I don't get that. I don't get that. And the truth of the matter is, that's just an appearance. Like we have a lot of appearances in our life. That's just an appearance. Who Santa really is a child undercover. Remember that for yourself because that's who you are. You're the divine child. And you're just undercover as an adult. God bless you.